there's a couple of problems with vendor prefixes. Of course, it's always going to require you as a web developer to redefine a particular style several times. Like, for example, in your CSS file, you might have a WebKit tag and an Opera and an MS. You know, you're going to have 3 or 4 or more tags to handle all these different browsers. And that can really make your CSS file bulky. You know, and if you want to support all the browsers, you're going to have to use those doggone prefixes. And then, when they finish the standards, you're going to have to go back and remove all those vendor prefixes, because eventually the browsers will stop supporting those. There's actually been talk, and this is evil and wrong, but there's actually been talk of certain browsers, let's just grab one, I'll just say Firefox, for example, that is adding in new CSS3 features after Google Chrome has already done it a long time ago, but the problem is nobody's actually added the vendor prefix for Mozilla Firefox to take advantage of that. So there was talk of maybe Mozilla Firefox also supporting the WebKit prefix, which is normally used by Apple Safari and Google Chrome. Now that's terribly wrong, because obviously Mozilla has its own tag, and they said they were not going to do that. So I have to defend Mozilla and say they were not going to do that. But there was talk that maybe they could, because there's, in some ways, I don't blame them if they thought about it, because if you're using a browser, Google Chrome, and you're getting all the cool whiz-bang features in it, rounded corners and image borders and stuff, and then when you go to view it in Mozilla, it doesn't look cool at all because you forgot to put in the Mozilla vendor prefixes, you'd almost want to, if you were the browser developer, to go ahead and add those vendor prefixes, just so you can show off those cool things temporarily. The VP8 is, I believe that's the WebM open source audio codec, isn't it? I'm just looking at the questions here. Poster does not work for IE9. That's true. Poster does not work. Poster is an extra attribute that can be added in with the video element, and it means what initial picture you want to be displayed. Actually, Poster doesn't work with any of the browsers, I thought. Maybe they've added it in with some of them. But it's a picture that can be shown for a video before it actually has started to play. Okay. Here's some vendor prefixes, probably the most popular ones you're going to use as a web developer. O for Opera, MS for Microsoft, Mozilla, and WebKit. And, of course, if you want to take advantage of these new CSS3 features, you're going to have to get comfortable with them. It's kind of neat. I found this wiki on the CSS Working Group site that showed more of the vendor prefixes. It's kind of amazing how many there are for some of the different types of user agents out there. So, some of the features that we have, these are just a few of them. Multi-column and grid layout, which I have to play with yet. I'm going to get into that. But we've got rounded corners, which everybody talks about. When you say CSS3, we say rounded corners. It's almost got to be in parentheses, finger quotes, because it's one of the most popular and cool features they have. But border images, I played with that, and I was really impressed with it. With border images, you can actually put borders around any of your different elements. You do that by defining one single image, and then you specify sprites inside of that image, which represent the 4 sides and the 4 corners. You'll specify the width of the side or the height of the side, depending if it's on the side or on top. And then based on 4 numbers, it can determine what the corners are going to be as well. And you can actually put really cool borders around that you've defined yourself. Text and box shadows work really nice. I found that box shadows, you can make them so they're really far off from the original tag. That makes it look like it's more 3D, but with text, it seems like you really can't go that far off. You see, you get to specify the X and Y axis of how far it is from the original text, but if you go too far, then it's hard to read the text. Animations and gradients are possible as well. Like here, for example, I'm going to show you a gradient example. And this gradient example I'm about to show you shows you the power of CSS3, how it reminds me of what I've seen in like SVG or in even using the canvas object. You can see that all we have on this page, which is an HTML5 document, is the inclusion of a style sheet. Notice I'm not setting the type either. You don't have to do that. And I've got an article and a div element. And through CSS, I'm actually going to go ahead and set up gradients. In my CSS, notice the article is set to 300 by 300 pixels. Whereas the div, I set to 200 by 200. And I put a break between them just to put a little space in there. And you can see I'm using my vendor prefix there, -moz, so this is only going to work in Mozilla Firefox for both of these. And I'm using linear gradient, but we do have other forms of gradients as well. Like we have circular gradient and more that are available. I'm using the shortcut for the actual colors. Pound F00 is really FF0000. And I'm specifying 20% for this particular color before it transitions to the other color, 00F. And then down below, I'm using different colors again. And this way, I'm doing it actually at an angle of 270 degrees. And I'm going from pound F00 over to 070. And there's my results. It's kind of amazing to see this kind of graphics being done with CSS. Something that you might immediately assume would have to be done inside of a canvas or an SVG. You're just doing this in simple CSS. And around these shapes even, I could go ahead and set up borders using the image border, or I could round the corners and I could show shadows, just changing that CSS file. Fallback for IE678 does not allow control on video. There might be a polyfill. Looking at the question for the video tag, I would take a look at polyfills for working with the older browsers. None that I know of right offhand, though. SVG is not HTML5. And to repeat, HTML5 does not include SVG. Okay? It's just funny to see that it is mentioned and grouped into HTML5, just like all the other topics we've been talking about. SVG's been around for quite a while and supported by all the browsers except Internet Explorer. Well, finally now in Internet Explorer 9, we do have support for SVG as well. SVG is different than working with a canvas object in the respect that SVG, you're basically defining XML content. And then based on the XML content, the browser will read that in and render it out. SVG is perfect for working maybe with XML content that maybe you programmatically created. You can actually save an SVG to an SVG file and just load that up directly in your browser and render it. Adobe Illustrator can create SVG files. You can export it as SVG as one of the data types that you have available to you. Right, but it primarily works with XML data. With Canvas, we generally like to use that and animate it with JavaScript. So that's a little bit different. Now, I have seen JavaScript that worked with SVG to dynamically change the content. That works as well, too, you know. But for the most part, when you take a look at some of the SVG examples out there, you're going to see a lot of XML content, whereas with Canvas, you're going to see more JavaScript content. This is a small circle over here, the red circle that was created with this SVG content. And it's really not much here. I mean, take a look at that. We got an SVG tag with a big old namespace across the top there, the XML namespace. And then we just defined a circle. You know, that's a circle tag specifying the X and the Y and the radius. Stroke is black, stroke width is 2, and the fill it in is red. So let's draw the black circle and fill it in with the red color. And that's SVG. That's a very simple example. They do have some cool examples. If you go to w3schools.com, SVG, you can see many different examples of using SVG, and you're going to see a lot of this XML content. Likewise, if you go out to the web and just search for SVG examples, gigantic font, you know, you'll see some pretty rich ones out there as well. Yeah, and some of these, what is it, butterfly? Well, that's pretty cool. And if I go to the end of this thing, you can see the actual file extension is .svg. That's a beautiful monarch. And if I view source, yeah, look at that. It's just a big old XML document, right? You can see all these numbers here. So it might be difficult to go ahead and create this manually with Notepad. It'd be impossible. That's where tools to create this for us, like this used Jask WebDraw to create it way back quite a while ago, would be preferred. Okay? You got to admit it's amazing drawing with just a bunch of numbers in an XML document to create that. But this is really what SVG can do for us.